peaceful protests open hearts and minds and focus attention on the systematic issues that our entire city needs to focus on so that we can address them and make this nation whole for everyone. As I said the other day, these systemic issues that we're facing, the problems didn't happen overnight, and we're not going to fix them overnight. But it is going to take all of us together to ensure that they are addressed. We saw so many peaceful protesters last night standing together for what is right and using their voices to be heard, using their voices for change. I want you to know that I hear you and I stand with you. It makes me proud to see our community stand up for what's right. And when you see the individuals out protesting, it's not just young people in our community. It is a mix of what makes our community great. The age differences, the cultural differences, everyone coming together so that their voices can be heard. I am here to be an ally, and I am here to listen, and I am here to stand with you. I also am here to have those important conversations about change and to work with each and every one of you bringing about that change and being that change. Our city is grieving, our country is grieving, and our community is grieving. And what we need now is action. So many of you have contacted me over the last 24 hours about the 8 Can't Wait campaign. And I want to thank you for taking an active role in demanding accountability for a brighter future here in Tampa. I want to share that Tampa has had these 8 policies in place for years. And for those of you who have not seen the 8 Can't Wait campaign, it is to ban chokeholds and strangleholds, require de-escalation, require warning before shooting, require that officers exhaust all our alternatives before shooting, a duty to intervene, a ban shooting at moving vehicles, requiring a use of force continuum, and requiring comprehensive reporting. We have provided documentation on our website that outlines every policy, every procedure, the training, and the legal bulletins associated with all 8 of those. And again, all of those policies and procedures and training were in place way before I retired from the Tampa Police Department. We're also working to contact the 8 Can't Wait team so that we can accurately portray the existing policies on their website. They are all up on our website now. The 8 Can't Wait policies are critical changes that police departments across the country should be implementing already. But in Tampa, we also know that is just the beginning. While we've been making positive changes and taking steps in the right directions, from interactions with protesters, we know that that's not enough, and we need to make fundamental changes as a country, as a city, and as a community. I look forward to working directly with the activists, the protest organizers, and leaders to make those important policy changes. Moving forward, I vow to continue working to bridge the gap between our city, our police department, and our community so that we can all work together on the right side of history to end racial injustice. Now I'm going to bring up Chief Dugan to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, over the last 6 days, for the most part, we have had peaceful protests around our city. We started at 41 arrests on Saturday to 21 arrests on Sunday to 2 arrests on Monday. Unfortunately, on Tuesday night, the first night of the curfew being lifted, we made 68 arrests. We had no arrest on Wednesday, and last night we made 3 arrests. So you can see the numbers and the trends. It looks that peaceful protest is starting to happen again. The police and the protesters are working together for the same cause, to end police brutality. We are looking at all incidents and claims of officers using excessive force. We take these complaints and these allegations serious, and they will be investigated, and everyone will be held accountable. We hear you and take allegations of misconduct seriously. We are working directly with Mayor Castor and her office to review our policies and protocols. Chief Tony Holloway from St. Petersburg Police Department contacted me moments ago and has asked me to be part of a committee of statewide police chiefs to review policies and implement change on how we police our communities. Mayor?
And next, I'm going to bring up Dr. Lori Friedel from University of South Florida. She, in essence, was the founder of Fair and Impartial Policing and has done that training all over the United States. And the Tampa Police Department were among the first of her clients. Dr. Friedel?
Thank you, Mayor.
First and last name before you start.
Lori Friedel, L-O-R-I-E, Friedel, F as in Frank, R-I-D-E-L-L, professor of criminology at USF and founder of Fair and Impartial Policing. So Fair and Impartial Policing is actually the #1 provider of implicit bias awareness training for law enforcement in North America. And what this training recognizes is that bias comes in more than just one form. For many years, we thought that bias was like the racist, who had conscious and deliberate biases based on animus. People who are unconcerned about their discriminatory behavior is the way we thought all bias manifested. And then the social psychologists found out that we all have implicit biases. And with implicit biases, we link groups to various stereotypes. It's not based on animus and hostility. These stereotypes can impact our perceptions and our behaviors outside of conscious awareness, and this can impact even well-intentioned people who reject at the conscious level biases, stereotypes, and prejudice. So our program brings to law enforcement the science of implicit bias. When we go into trainings, we're talking about what is implicit bias, what is the science that undergirds it, how might implicit bias manifest in the policing profession, what are the consequences of bias policing for community members, for law enforcement officers, for agencies and communities, and then really importantly, what are the skills that they need to produce impartial policing. And in fact, we have different versions of the curriculum because there's different sets of skills for patrol officers, for supervisors, mid-managers, and command level. Just as some examples, at the officer level, we want them to be able to reduce their biases, manage their biases, beware of the biases of others, including colleagues and community members. We want them to know their agency's policy and also, when they can, slow things down so that their biases do not impact them in fast-moving situations. At the command level training, which is actually the longest, there's a lot for the leadership to discuss. And the leadership talks about how do we produce impartial policing through recruitment and hiring, operational commands, measurement, outreach to community, the culture of the agency, leadership message, and so forth. So as Mayor Castor said, when she was Chief Castor, she brought us in to train and started with Chief Castor hosted a regional Train the Trainer, which means many agencies from around the area were present. And at that training, we trained some of those agencies' trainers to implement the patrol curriculum and the supervisor curriculum. And then Chief Castor brought us back to do mid-managers training for some of her leadership, and then we held a command community training where we not only had the Tampa Police Department leadership, but we also had concerned community leaders in the room talking about bias and policing and coming up with a plan for moving forward. Right now with Chief Dugan, we are talking about planning some trainings. We're looking at August. We want to hold 2 community trainings. And then Chief Dugan wants to bring in our trainers to recertify the TPD, Fair and Impartial Policing trainers, but then also learn what we call the booster curriculum, That is, what is the second round of fair and impartial policing training to reinforce messages?
Thank you, Dr. Friedel. And as she stated, when I was the chief of police, we did bring her in, and again, she's teaching law enforcement agencies around the United States, just finished with the New York Police Department, so it's difficult to be able to schedule. When I was the chief of police, I brought her in, and our entire command staff, along with community leaders, including Dr. Carolyn Collins, who at the time was the president of the NAACP. We had the president of the ACLU, and we had a number of community individuals, community leaders. We had reverends in there and a number of others, and we went through this training as a group, listening to each other and learning from each other. And so now I would like to bring up Dr. Carolyn Collins, who is the past president of the NAACP. She will talk about her involvement with the fair and impartial policing, and then, and if she wants to, she can talk about her her time with the Citizens Academy, because when she was the president of the NAACP, she had the entire board go through the Tampa Police Department's Citizens Academy. And she is currently on the Citizens Review Board here for the city of Tampa. So she will speak on both of those topics. A good friend, Carolyn Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a privilege, and I hope you guys, I'm tall, so. Okay. It's a privilege to be here to really go back in history, because if we go all the way back in history, this has been a constant problem. But the positive part about this is to have individuals that you've had an opportunity to learn from, Lori, and that you've had an opportunity to work with our police chief, currently mayor, and our current police chief and past police chief. I want to say that when I was called as president of the NAACP, I carried a number of my members. I said, who wants to go with me to this training? And I happened to carry a young lady with me who actually had brothers that was in the police force, and she was just overwhelmed for the opportunity. And we were in with editors and owners of current newspapers, the ministers, as you indicated, and all kind of community individuals that were there, where we had an opportunity to hear and input about implicit bias, and had an opportunity to do a self-evaluation, and indicated that, you know what, we have some implicit biases as well. And so we had an opportunity, it paid off. I left there and I went on my last national convention with the NAACP in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I had an opportunity to go and listen to cops and hear about community policing. And they sent us away with a directive. And that directive was quite simple. All 1,000 branches that are represented, go back home and get you a citizen review. Well, I came back, I sat down, I talked with the mayor, and he said, that's something I think we need. And so as we look at the problems that are across the world, and we look at those that are trickling down right here to our community, we are fortunate that we are working on several of those as well. The police academy, I called the mayor. She told me before she was mayor, when she was police chief, and she said yes. So I tried to get every member of the NAACP, all officers, to go in, all of our executive committee to go in and have training with the police academy. We even opened the door for our youth to go in, and we were able to get a group of youth that went into the academy as well. I was fortunate enough to go through the academy twice, and then I went to it a third time. And it gave us an opportunity to interact with Tampa Police Department, to see the things that were going on and put us in those positions to sensitize us so that we will have that level of sensitivity to know exactly what they may have been going through if we were in those conditions. Of course, I was known for somebody who would shoot. So I can recognize that they kind of gave me that little award. But that was very important, and I do encourage all of the individuals in the community, especially a number of our young people that my heart go out with. You know, I have 2 sons, I understand this, and I have 3 grandsons. God blessed me with one granddaughter, but I don't want anything to happen to them. And so we want our young people to go to the police academy when we get over this COVID-19 and situations are back the way they are. We want you to go. We want you to experience it. We want you to interact. And we want you to get the meaning of what it is to actually work. Well, coming out of that, I was fortunate enough that I was then one of the appointees of the former mayor to the Citizen Review Board when that was formed. And I want to read, I don't want to say this myself because I hear so much right now. I've been the recipient of information from the National Office of the NAACP, the ACLU, from many other organizations and groups. I've heard young people talk. I've heard the chants. I've heard them talk about we can't breathe, and we've not been able to breathe for a long time. But we happen to be in a community right now where we're going to work with the leadership and we're going to make sure that we can breathe. But I want you to hear the mission of Citizen Review. It says, review completed professional standards, formerly called internal affairs, investigations involving the use of force. And then it says, and are cases that are important or interested to the community as well as the chief of police. And we've been doing that down in City Hall since 2015 in November after we went through a considerable amount of training. And then those cases come before us. And we are fortunate. Police chief don't pull our cases. His captain doesn't pull our cases. The mayor doesn't pull our cases. Our chair and our vice chair added in about a year or so ago, we decided they go in. And so they get a chance to look at all of the cases and they pull the cases that they may see that need to have some evaluation. And we don't always agree, do we, Chief? No. We do not always agree. Yes, once or twice, yes, after all those years. But we don't always agree. What we try to do is be analytical, to be strategic, and make sure that we can look at what we're seeing and what we think may need to be changed to better the community. So I think I'm going to close my comments off of the use of force. I think I've already sent that letter and say, hey, pull us back. We've not been able to meet because of COVID-19. And so we tend to follow a stature, which would put us perhaps where the city council will be meeting. We will hopefully be able to review more cases. We also hear people saying, well, we need to look at the police that are being hired. I want to tell you that as a graduate of my institution, I won't be partial and biased right now, but as a graduate of my university, my four-year college, we went to the police and we said, you need to get up there and see if you can get some more people of color, brown, African Americans. They went up to the university. They participated in a career fair, and the university offered them the opportunity to come back, not for the career fair, but just come back and come in here and interact with our students. And so they've been doing that. So I think as a community, we have to look at the steps that we're taking. We have to make sure that they're the right steps, and we need to bring everybody to the table and work diligently. Let's work sincerely, and let's make a difference. And I think we're on the right path. And I would say to the young people, keep doing what you're doing, keep protesting, but let's make sure the protest is positive. Let's make sure the protest doesn't leave anybody hurt, and we don't have time to mend. We need time to build. Thank you so much.
Right, and I just want to underscore a few things that Carolyn said. She talked about a lot of positive things, but what I want everyone to also hear is that we have a long way to go. We have there, you can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it in the protesters in our community. We have changes to make, and we have a long way to go. And so, again, I want everyone to understand that we hear that voice, but we also want that energy to continue on into fixing those systemic issues that have held down the black and brown communities for so long. It's not going to be easy. Problems didn't arise overnight, and they're not going to be fixed overnight. But if we come together as a community to address those issues and find real solutions, then we will be able to lift our entire community up. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with a number of USF students, some still in school, some graduated, and there's a young individual that had actually walked in the protests last Saturday and then went home and awoke to turn on the television and see the devastation that had occurred overnight. The buildings that had burned right down the street from his school. So he called, got a group of his friends together, fellow athletes, and they went out and did what they could to clean up, to pick up that mess. And so he wanted to be here today to address everyone, but he has to work. So he is at his job right now, but he wanted me to express his feeling that we do have a long way to go. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of frustration, but we need to channel that energy into positive action and not into breaking down our community. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that you may have.
Mayor, when it comes to the Eight Can't Wait organization, why do you think the organization was so off when it comes to rating this city and this city's police department?
I didn't look at all of the other cities, but what I would expect is that it's a national movement, and that they just put cities up there and then put question marks next to all of them. That would be my anticipation. And also, I am so glad that they're doing that. I actually have a call at 3 o'clock today as part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I have been asked to chair a committee with the major city chiefs, and it's Mayor Lori Lightfoot from Chicago, the mayor of Cincinnati, and myself. And we're looking at ways that we can implement these standards nationwide. There are no federal standards for law enforcement that are required. And that is a problem, because you have agencies that are trying to do the right thing, and then you have other individuals that still have the accepted practice that we watched was used to murder George Floyd. And that has to stop.
Chief, you said you only had 3 arrests last night. For those that were out on the street, it seemed like your tactics had changed a little bit. You let them be free, and you didn't walk with them. Was that attributable to the 3 arrests, do you think? Only the 3 arrests?
Well, what was frustrating for me was when the mayor lifted the curfew, the idea was to get everybody back on the page of peaceful protesting and not stifle their First Amendment rights. And then, we ended up making 68 arrests that night. And every time we tried to back off on Tuesday night to give them their space, something would happen. And that's how we ended up making arrests. And so we have been trying to pull back as much as possible to give them their freedom. And it's a balance of how do we protect them, how do we give them their freedom. And so we had over 1,000 people in front of the police department last night with no police officers there. Now we were watching through the window from a distance. Of course, they were cursing us, calling every name in the book, but that's okay. We're doing our best to give them the freedom, but we have to find that balance of, are we going to let them take over our town or not?
And does it take one bad actor, which some peaceful protesters might not even see, for you to make the decision to call it an unlawful assembly?
Well, what we're trying to do is specifically target those who are violating the law. Now, that makes it difficult, and we're going to have some video later today to explain some incidents of what happened of those 3 arrests that we made. And so we're trying to target the people that are trying to create the chaos when they break the law. Unfortunately, the way the law works, sometimes you have to let them break the law before you can arrest them.
And one of those you arrested was an organizer?
I don't know that part. I know we arrested one who had a bullhorn and maybe made himself an organizer.
Chief, can you clear up some confusion? There's protesters that say you guys are using rubber bullets on them. They're saying you're using pepper spray without announcing it or giving them a warning. They're also saying you're using tear gas. Can you clear that up? Are you using all that?
We are not using tear gas. We're not using rubber bullets. Now, there are times when we're using pepper spray, but it's a different type of pepper spray that it quickly dissipates. We try to give warnings, but when they start fighting with us, throwing rocks and bottles, we're not able to give a warning. But we're not using tear gas or rubber bullets. I'm not sure how that has gained steam, but we're going to have some more information out there today that shows some of the tactics that they're using. Some of our concerns is that they're the ones using tear gas. They're the ones that are using smoke. And we have evidence from yesterday that they were using smoke and it wasn't the police department.
But not rubber bullets, you use less than lethal rounds.
Yeah, we don't use rubber bullets and we don't use tear gas.
What is less than lethal?
Well, it's a variety of things, but it's not rubber bullets.
Can you talk a little bit about the arrest last night? I know you said 3 were named.
And see, this is where I think it gets confusing for people as they think peaceful protesters were arrested. There was one arrest where a woman had an umbrella. She had hit a police officer. It was a long spike at the end of the umbrella, and hit a police officer with it a few minutes earlier. Well, then when she came up, she was peacefully protesting, but we arrested her for what she did prior to that. And so it looks like we arrested a peaceful protester. And then you're also we'll have video of people throwing rocks at the police. Someone took a fire extinguisher, blew that in the air to make it look like there was smoke. We did use OC spray on people. These are the problems. People are thinking, oh, the police, these peaceful protesters turn very quickly, hijack a peaceful march, and ruin it for everybody else.
Chief, I'm curious, we tend to gauge the public's feelings and reactions, but what has the reaction from your officers been? They're dealing with this, which is a fallout of something that happened 1,000 miles away, and now it's come face to face with them. How are they, what are they going through personally?
They're devastated. They feel like people hate them. You know, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's disappointing to me to see our police officers go through this.
Chief, in regards to the video that you just referenced with the young woman that was kind of pinned down by officers, you mentioned that she had hit an officer with her umbrella before. Can you kind of explain why the amount of force was used on this woman when she was hit to the ground?
Yeah, we'll be showing that video later. I can tell you that if they had used that technique, now the technique looks violent, but if they had used that technique in Minneapolis, George Floyd would still be alive.
What's the message for this upcoming weekend?
Work with us. We'll work with you. We've been working with people. What we need to have people do is start pointing out the bad actors. I don't want to compare this to 9/11, but if you recall, when we had hijackers take over planes, eventually people started fighting back against this. We need people to take back the protest, point out the ones that are not there to peacefully protest. If you see somebody who has weapons on them, mortars, bullets, guns, we need to know about it. We need to start pointing all these things out to law enforcement so we can take action. If we're not there, then they need to call 911.